Do you ever feel like you're navigating a dating minefield, especially when you're looking for a real, meaningful relationship? For years, my experience of dating guys has always been of this impossible, frustrating challenge. In this video, I'll be sharing 10 tips for gay dating that I learned over the years and I wish I knew earlier to help you navigate this journey with more confidence and success. Plus, I'll dive into how to get into the right mindset to make your dates successful and stay away from attitudes that turn guys off. Let's start from the beginning. When you're going on the first, second, or third dates, you're looking for sparks, right? But if you are looking for sparks, like so many others, what if I told you that this initial spark can actually be a distraction? It might even be what you don't want to have. Sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? So let me explain what I mean by that. When we talk about sparks, we usually mean that immediate, electrifying connection where you feel this undeniable attraction or chemistry. Maybe he's super charismatic, or you find yourself attracted to his looks or personality or intelligence. We're drawn to these kind of things. It's natural. So it's easy to mistake charisma or sexual attraction for something deeper. If a guy is charismatic, it just means that he knows how to charm people. He makes you laugh. He tells us a touching story. He's so sweet. He's just attractive. He looks amazing. Can you see how all of these things have nothing to do with how good he will be as a partner? These things don't give you a clue if he's the right guy for a long-term, committed relationship. In fact, those parts can blind you to what really matters. Compatibility, shared values, how good you are together at solving problems and resolving conflicts, and how well he treats you and cares for you. So, sparks are overrated. Instead of searching for that supposedly instant connection, focus on getting to know the real person and how you two fit together over at least several dates. That's why you'd want to challenge yourself to date outside your typical preference and give people a chance, even if the first date doesn't blow you away. Some guys are just bad at first dates, and it's normal to feel a bit awkward in that situation. Plus, they might not be smooth charmers, but they could actually turn out to be the most amazing partner you could wish for. Now, I'm not suggesting to go on a second date with somebody who was just terrible, no chemistry or shared interests whatsoever. But if there was at least something there, if you notice there's something about this person that could maybe somehow potentially be interesting, then absolutely yes, go for a second and third date. Give it a proper chance. True compatibility takes time to reveal itself, and the best relationships often begin with a slow burn rather than immediate spark. Tip number 2, how to know if he's Mr. Right. When you're dating someone, it's natural to feel that inner pressure to figure out, is he the one? Should I keep seeing him, or is there someone better out there? Especially in today's world with dating apps, it can feel like there's an endless lineup of potential matches, and that can really mess with your head. The idea of choosing a life partner can be overwhelming, and it's easy to fall into the trap of overanalyzing every date. But here's the thing, dating doesn't have to be this big, stressful decision-making process. Here's how I take a lot of that pressure off, and it's all about what to focus on and what decisions you need to make. So let's understand where people tend to get it all wrong. It's a common mistake to think that because you're dating to find a life partner, you need to make that big call after every date. I mean, after all, if you've met a guy twice and you need to decide if it's worth your time to continue seeing him, you must make a judgment call on whether or not he'd be a good life partner for you, right? Not really. The truth is, in the early stages of dating, whether it's for the first few weeks or even months, you simply don't have enough information to make that kind of decision. Why? Because real compatibility goes beyond surface level attraction or shared interests or even how good you feel with him. That's still what I call sparks territory from tip number 1. It takes time to see how someone handles challenges, how he treats you consistently over time, how well you build things together and solve problems together, and how your values align in different situations. Early on, You're both probably showing the best versions of yourself, which is natural, but it's only after spending more time together and seeing each other in different lights and through a variety of experiences, only then you can truly assess if this person is right for a long-term relationship. So there's no point in having this burden of a big decision that's not even possible to make after a few weeks. Instead, you really only need to answer two simple questions. First, does it feel good enough for you to want to meet again? And the second question, is there anything that came up that's a deal breaker? For example, imagine you're on the fourth date and the guy casually mentions that he's currently in a polyamorous relationship. Polyamory can be a fulfilling choice for many, and it might even be what you are looking for. But the issue here is the lack of transparency about such a fundamental aspect of his life. You're hearing that and might be thinking to yourself, he should have been transparent about it much earlier on. If you're like me, trust and honesty are non-negotiable. And when those are missing, it's perfectly reasonable to decide not to continue seeing him. Now, when it comes to little things like maybe he's nice, but there are a couple of quirks that you're not sure about, just don't overthink it. Remember, you've just deciding on whether it's worth seeing him again. Overanalyzing every detail can suck all the fun out of dating. Even worse than that, it might send mixed signals that can throw off the relationship. Keep this in mind to lower your pressure and stress and let things unfold naturally. Now, let's tackle something that can be tough for many of us, dealing with rejection. Does the fear of being rejected ever hold you back? Maybe it stops you from messaging that guy you're interested in, or you've stopped going on dates, or at a social event, you won't approach someone you like. It's such a common feeling, and I've been there too. A lot of times, the fear of rejection is stronger than your craving for a loving relationship, so it keeps you stuck. The reason that fear of rejection is so strong is because it can feel like a personal attack on our worth. We all have insecurities, and our ego links rejection directly to those insecurities. Here's how it can happen. When someone rejects us, especially in a romantic setting, it's easy to believe we've been turned down because of who we are. For example, if you have insecurities about your looks, our mind tends to look for evidence to support what we already believe. So when someone rejects you, it can feel like a confirmation of your worst fears. Of course he's rejected me. I don't look good enough for him. This is why rejection can feel like a judgment on your entire self. But is it really? Let's think about it for a minute. Everyone has their own baggage, their own preferences, and stories that shape how they see the world. It happened to me that someone rejected me on a dating app when I told him my age. Should I be worried that there's something wrong in me because of my age? Am I too old for all the guys in the world? I got a big clue when another guy told me he found my age to be very attractive to him. So, is it about my age or about the other guy's preferences? Someone might reject you because you don't fit the narrow image that they have in their mind of the person I'll date has to look a certain way. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with how you look. They might have even rejected you because you remind them of one of their exes in a relationship that didn't end well, or because of some unresolved issue from their childhood or for 1,000 other reasons. All of these reasons have one thing in common. It's about them. It's just a reflection of their own perspective. And that rejection that you receive has nothing to do with your worth. When you disconnect yourself and your worth from their decision and their perspective, you can free yourself from the anxiety that rejection brings. You'll deeply understand that it doesn't diminish your value. It just means that the person wasn't the right fit for you. If anything, rejection helps you figure out who isn't a good fit. It's like trying on clothes to see what looks good. Not every outfit is going to be perfect. And it's not about you. It's about the outfit not being right. And that's okay because eventually one of them will be the right fit. So remember this when managing your fear of rejection. Don't let it cause unnecessary pain. Don't let it take over, and don't let it stand in the way of finding the love of your life. Which brings us to tip number 4. Don't underdate. By underdating, I mean not going on dates anymore because you're sick and tired of guys just looking for hookups or endless dates that lead nowhere. I've been there and it's frustrating. Or you have this fear that you'll never find the one, so it's useless to try. Or maybe you went through a rough breakup or someone you really cared about let you down. That kind of hurt doesn't just fade away, it leaves marks. Over time, those marks can start to feel like a warning. Don't go there again, it's too painful. But if you don't confront this fear, it can end up controlling your life. Or maybe you've been rejected too many times in the past and decided it's better to be alone, kind of similar to the fear of rejection from the previous tip. If you're there, you'd want to ask yourself, where does this approach come from, really? Is it a defense mechanism against rejection, where you're so afraid of getting rejected that you reject dating itself? It's understandable to feel disillusioned after dealing with a series of empty encounters or painful relationships. Those experiences can make it tempting to retreat into solitude. It feels safe, and there's not much risk of getting hurt again. Believing that staying single shields you from the chaos and heartbreak of dating might seem logical, but that safety can become isolation, and the peace and stillness can turn into loneliness. Breaking out of that protective shell might seem daunting, but it's in those moments of vulnerability that we often find the most rewarding connections. If you realize you're under dating, you've been holding back on dating, and you now decide to face those fears, you're taking a big step forward, opening yourself up to finding that someone who truly shares your values and what you're looking for. Now, the opposite to underdating is also a challenge for many, and that's our tip number 5. Don't overdate, which means going on multiple dates almost on a daily basis or jumping from one short-lived relationship to the next with no gaps. It can feel like you're on a conveyor belt, moving from one guy to the next without taking the time to really evaluate how you feel or give anyone a proper chance. When you do this, you're exhausting yourself and you're spreading yourself too thin emotionally. Every date requires a bit of emotional investment. Over time, you'll experience emotional burnout, where you start feeling numb or indifferent to the whole process. You might find yourself just going through the motions without really connecting or feeling excited about anyone, because your emotional energy has been spread across all of those other encounters. This can also make you feel cynical, like maybe a meaningful connection isn't even possible. Another thing that happens when you're constantly juggling multiple potential partners is that it creates what's called a paradox of choice. You'll find yourself thinking, what if there's someone better just around the corner? This mindset can stop you from fully committing to anyone or investing in any one relationship, because there's always that thought in the background that you might be missing out on something better. In the end, it leads to a cycle of shallow connections that never really develop into something more meaningful. It's like choosing quantity over quality, where having too many options actually makes it harder to find the right person. And then there's something called dating fatigue, where dating itself becomes so routine and predictable that it loses its excitement. When it starts to feel like a chore, that's a sign you're not approaching it with the right mindset anymore. This can be a major roadblock to finding true love, because the process itself becomes draining and discouraging instead of what it should be: fun, exciting, and fulfilling. Tip number 6. On dating apps, be intentional about the profiles you engage with. If you're looking for a serious relationship, focus on profiles that state the same very clearly. A guy who's upfront about wanting a long-term relationship is signaling honesty and maturity. And these are qualities that are essential for building something meaningful. Being intentional and picky about the profiles you engage with also means you're willing to ignore those who don't mention anything about a serious commitment in their profile. Don't waste time chatting with guys who are not really sure what they want, or they're stating that they are just looking for a hookup, even if they're exactly your type physically. I know it's so tempting to go for that instant gratification when someone who's hot and just your type shows interest. Can you resist the temptation? Here's the thing. Every time you go for the easy hookup, you're not just losing valuable time, you're also splitting your focus and emotional energy. Imagine all that time wasted texting and meeting your sex date and feeling the emptiness afterwards. That's time and energy you could have invested in getting to know someone who's actually aligned with your values and what you want in a partner. There's another sort of hidden danger here as well. When you keep going on these less serious meetings, it can chip away at your mindset. Over time, something interesting happens. You start viewing every interaction through a casual lens, which can make it harder to shift gears and recognize when someone's in front of you with real potential for a serious relationship. By being intentional, you're setting a standard for what happens in your dating life. This really helps you stay focused on your goal, and it also increases your chances of attracting someone who's on the same page as you. So, the next time you're checking out profiles or getting that message from someone who's clearly not looking for anything serious, remind yourself of what you truly want. Don't settle for distractions. Keep your eyes on the prize and engage only with those who are looking for the same kind of connection you are. Tip number 7, texting. Did you ever find yourself playing games with reply times? You don't really want to do that. Don't try to look busy or cool. Instead, just keep it simple. Reply when it's natural. If you're available to text back immediately, ride that momentum and engage in conversation. Being real is more important than trying to play it smart. If you happen to be available for an immediate response, then this shows you're genuinely interested without needing to manipulate the situation. But don't feel pressure to respond immediately if you're genuinely busy. Let the conversation flow naturally, and if you notice the other person is being slower or quicker to respond, you can try matching their energy. Just don't overthink it. Sending a text after a date is a simple way to keep the connection going and build some rapport. Just a quick message saying you had a great time or asking if you got home safely. It's a great way to show thoughtfulness without overdoing it. Keep the tone playful and light. If you notice the texting pace slows down or becomes one-sided, pull back slightly to gauge his interest level. But again, don't play games. Let your communication with each other develop organically and without any mind games. Tip number 8. Have you ever dated someone who was all in one day and then suddenly pulls away the next day? He can be super affectionate and into you, but then he goes cold or distant. Or maybe as soon as you start pulling back, he suddenly reappears and is all interested again. This hot and cold behavior can be really confusing and frustrating. Now, there are a few reasons why this might be happening. He could be dealing with his own inner conflicts. Maybe he's struggling with intimacy or even with self-acceptance of being gay. Or it could be that your attachment styles are clashing. And here how that might look like. You start getting closer emotionally and he's really into you. But then he asks for space and suddenly you're left feeling anxious or rejected. Or maybe he's mentioned that he's had clingy partners in the past, or he tells you that you're being too clingy. If any of this sounds familiar, it could be a sign that he's an avoidant attachment style, which means he gets uncomfortable when things get too close. It could also be the other way around. Maybe you're the one who really wants intimacy, but you also feel a bit scared by it, so you find yourself needing space. When that happens, he might start getting clingy, and suddenly you're both caught in this push-pull dynamic. This could be a sign that your attachment style is more avoidant, while his attachment style is what's known as anxious. Understanding these dynamics can be a game changer in your dating life. I highly recommend the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. When I first read the book, I couldn't even take a break. It was so fascinating and such an eye-opener for me. I suddenly saw these patterns in my past relationships that I hadn't understood before. If this topic of attachment resonates with you and you'd like me to dive deeper into it, just let me know in the comments below. When you're dealing with those hot-cold behaviors, the key is to avoid getting caught up in the anxiety or frustration of it all. Instead of chasing them or waiting anxiously for them to come around, try having an honest conversation. This isn't about making accusations or causing drama. It's about understanding where you both stand and whether you're on the same page for something more committed. And if yes, how is it going to look like? You'd want to do that to protect your emotional well-being and make sure that you're investing in someone who's equally invested in you. Tip number 9 is all about jealousy. Have you ever been in a relationship where your partner constantly questions your every move? They want to know exactly where you are and they need proof that you're being loyal. It can feel like you're walking on eggshells, always trying to reassure them, but they always need more reassurance. This kind of jealousy isn't just about you. It can come from your partner's anxieties, fear of abandonment, or past traumas that they haven't fully dealt with. So, your partner is struggling with their own insecurities or past hurts, and as a result, they're trying to control the situation so they can feel secure. And that leads both of you down a very unhealthy path. The need for control can start to damage the trust between you. It creates a constant source of anxiety and hurt. In the worst cases, it can even spiral into emotional abuse. So, how do you handle this? First, recognize that this is their issue to work on, not yours. You can't fix someone else's insecurities, especially not by constantly accommodating their jealous demands. In fact, if you try to do so, you'll start sacrificing your own well-being, and from there it can only get worse for both of you. So what can you do instead? Encourage them to seek therapy where they can explore and address these underlying issues. But whether they agree to therapy or not, it's crucial that you set clear boundaries about what behaviors are acceptable to you. You have every right to protect your own mental and emotional health. And here's something to seriously consider. If your partner isn't willing to address their emotional issues, take a moment to ask yourself, is this dynamic something you want to keep dealing with? Is this the kind of relationship that truly makes you happy? It's tough to face, but sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself and for them is to step back and reassess if this relationship really serving you both in a healthy way. Remember, love is meant to bring you peace and joy, not a constant struggle for trust. If it feels like a battle, it's worth thinking what you are fighting for. Number 10. As your relationship becomes more serious, it's natural to start thinking about what kind of future you want together. For some, this means having an open and honest conversation about monogamy or non-monogamy. If you're not thinking about it yet, or if you both seem comfortable with where things are, there's no pressure to force the topic. But at some point in your dating phase, it's crucial to have at least some conversation about it, because it often touches on core values. Even if you're not ready to dive into the specifics of non-monogamy, understanding where your partner stands on these values can give you insight into his long-term compatibility with you. The key is to approach the conversation with sensitivity and without assumptions. The goal here isn't to push any agenda, but rather to understand each other's views and set clear boundaries. If you do decide to explore non-monogamy, it's important to dive into the specifics. What would that look like for both of you? Would it involve casual encounters, maybe emotional connections with others, or something else entirely? Agree on what's off limits and on how you'd handle communication about outside relationships. What's TMI? How much detail would you feel comfortable sharing? These are important questions to consider because down the road, they can help avoid misunderstanding and hurt feelings. Even if non-monogamy isn't on the table, it's a great idea to have a more high-level conversation about boundaries and expectations. Every relationship evolves, and feelings and needs change over time. When you take care to keep the lines of communications open and you check in with each other regularly, you ensure that both of you remain comfortable and on the same page. The key to success here is maintaining honesty, respect, and genuine care for each other's emotional well-being. For exclusive content on gay dating and relationships, check out the link in the video description to sign up for my free newsletter. And if there is a specific issue you're dealing with, drop it in the comments below. I'd love hearing from you, and it helps me decide what to cover in future videos.